back. Very many thanks for choosing to stay with us in this hour. And in case you're just joining us, welcome to Kenya's Gold, where the focus of the day is on macadamia farming. Now, macadamia's market is projected to grow steadily because a lot more people are preferring nuts as a healthy snack as opposed to indulging in junk foods. Now, to help us understand more on the value chain of macadamia, we do have the distinct honor of being joined by Mr. James Washira, who is an enterprise development expert. Thank you so very much for making time to be with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, you also came bearing goodies, which you have displayed on our table.
Yes.
Now, before we even get into the meat of the conversation, please help us understand what we have on the table from the very first there to the last one.
Thank you, Gina. Macadamia, of course, goes through many processes.
Right.
When it is on the tree, this is what the fruit is, with a green husk on top of it. Generally, you don't shake the tree to get the nut coming down with the husk. What you do is you wait until it cracks itself. By the time it comes down with the nut, the green is almost out.
Right. And what are the dangers of shaking the tree to get the fruit?
If you try to shake the tree, what will happen is you get an immature nut. Because once it falls down, there is no more growth. So if you shake it and it doesn't drop, then it means you are getting an immature nut. And that's one of the problems. I know you have had that in your other shows about the immature nuts.
Mature nuts.
Yes.
So from that step, this is the very beginning.
From this first step,
right,
the green cracks. As it's drying, it expands, and therefore gets into the second stage, where you now get the nut. Sometimes the husk doesn't come out by its own. So somebody has to sit down, and women normally do it, or the children. They remove the husk out, and then they have the nut of different sizes.
Right.
Small, big, and all that.
Now, this nut, this shell is not a very easy one to crack. We want you to help us understand over time, is there technology that has come in place to help us remove the kernel, and also in such a way we're not going to destroy the shape and form of the nut inside? Yeah,
initially, of course, the nut was just by cracking, like as you do with a hammer. And that was a very laborious process. But now with technology, there is ways that it comes in, it is separated by a cracker, and then it goes into a separation place where the shell drops down and the nut goes to the next stage. So there's already that technology that you are not hitting and then picking the nut yourself. It cracks and pushes the cracked shell down, and then the white substance inside goes to the color sorting. All
right. So if I want to access that technology as a farmer, where do I go to? Is it easily accessible, or it's only in niche markets?
Yeah. The cracking doesn't happen at the farm level. The cracking happens at the processor's level.
Right.
So by the time it is getting to the processor, this is what the farmer delivers. Because if you want to crack, the farmer, especially in Kenya, mainly farmers are 5 to 10 trees. So the amount of nuts they get is not economical for you to have a cracker. So that's why you aggregate from many farmers to deliver to the factory who can be able to afford this technology.
Great.
Yes.
So from step 2, we move to step 3.
Yeah, once you crack, now this cracked, this is the what we call the raw macadamia nut. The raw macadamia nut, the shell drops, then this raw macadamia goes in the process and before I forget, before you crack this drying, you dry you put this in a dryer to remove the moisture content, because by the time it's coming from the farm, there's a lot of water inside.
How long do you dry it for?
Mainly a minimum of 14 days with the strong dryers. Right. So once you dry it, that's when you go to cracking. So that time is already soft for cracking.
Right.
So from the dryer to the cracking. Once you crack, the shells remain, then this goes to a color sorter, because at that time you have not seen the quality of the nuts, because some could have inside damage, others are big, small. So it goes to a color sorter that picks by color the various quality of the nut, and they go to different sieves as the color sorter is shaking. So finally, you are able to separate from the whole nut, small nut, insect damage, which are of course waste. But in this case, when they are waste, you can squeeze them for oil,
Right.
but not for edible oil, but for cosmetic.
Right.
Yes.
And when we are drying, does that happen at a farm level or a processing level?
Now there are a few people who have come with the drying machines, because the dryer is just a dryer, but mainly all the drying process have been done at the processor level.
Right.
But now there are a few what I call middlemen or brokers that have enough capacity that they can be able to dry, but majorly the drying is at the factory level.
And is there a moisture content level that is expected in terms of figures?
I think it has to be below 15%. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So what happens when it's above 15%?
That's why you have to keep
for
it
the 14 days.
Yeah, you have to keep it to dry, and you're testing as you are drying.
Right.
So there is sampling.
Right.
So by the time you get the moisture content that you need, that's the time now you remove to take to the cracking.
Right.
Yes.
And then now we have the final stage. Please talk to us about that.
Now this is a roasted, but this one, let's talk about this a little more, because in the export market, this is what we send out. This is normally the roasting is normally what we are doing for the local market, but the export market, it goes as a kernel. Now this is roasted. I think there is one missing item there from
so
there.
We'll check it after.
We check it out there, because from the raw there is a kernel. So in the raw one, if you go to a factory, you find what you call the sorting. Because sorting, there is a color sorter that can remove certain items, but there are certain things you cannot see, and mainly this is done by women. So if you go to a factory, you find rows and rows of ladies sorting together color to remove, separate the big, the small, the insect damage as a further processing. Then once you finish the processing, then this is packed, vacuum packed for export. Yeah, this is what we export.
Right.
But when you are coming out to the local market, roasting, if you go to the supermarket, the ones people who have gone to Kenya Airways, you find the nuts. This is now when it's roasted, either sorted, honey-coated, for ready to use,
All right,
ready
now,
to eat. Yeah.
Very quickly, you can tell us, besides the nut, which we can see here, from macadamia, when you're talking about value addition, what other commodities can we get?
Of course, the immediate one, we have just talked about it, is extraction of edible oil for cooking. From the macadamia, or even for cosmetic.
Right.
In Kenya, of course, because of the quantity, the demand of the kernel in the outside market, because when you crush, then you're not having the nut to use. Yeah. So the market is still big enough so that you don't have enough quantities to crush for edible oil.
For oil production.
Of course, some people are doing it in small scale, but you don't have enough to do large scale. But for the ones that are spoiled, then you extract for cosmetic.
Right.
But then for the nut in shell, when you break it, that nut is used for running burners. I mean the boilers as a source of energy. Because it has a very high calorific value. Other people in the horticulture sector, once they get the seed, they lay it down on the floor of the greenhouses, to avoid the muddy areas as just a traffic area. Then another thing that is done, you can also have it for the briquettes. For cooking. You have seen now in the supermarket, you have the briquettes from husks. Even the coffee, I mean the macadamia nuts has a very high calorific value as a source of energy.
Right.
Yes. You also in the supermarket you have seen biscuits. Even one of the local retailers, you have seen biscuits with the macadamia nut as an ingredient, and chocolate and all that.
Yeah.
So those all things can be done. Of course, we also know some people are using it for ornaments, but the ornaments, of course, you must have enough nuts to do either the necklace, the decoration in terms of portrait. It can also be used for that. Right.
Now, you've mentioned a very big percentage of the amount of macadamia we produce is for the export market, which is about 90%.
90%, yes.
And that's the reason as to why we don't have enough to produce edible oils. Are there conversations to probably increase our production, acreage, and even more farmers in that space? Because then, if we're in a capacity of producing edible oils, it can help us in reducing budgets that we have of importing edible oils, which as of 2023 was at $1.2 billion. Is that a plan that we have? Is it even plausible at this point.
That is very true. Of course, we have one big challenge in macadamia farming areas. Generally, it was generally Mount Kenya region. I told you most of our farmers have 7 to 10 trees. The large sizes are minimal. So the expansion space to grow macadamia in large scale is not there. Although in the western part of Kenya, Rift Valley, where there is a little more expansive lands, programs are there where now farmers have picked it up and are expanding their macadamia growing. Of course, you see at the moment we are producing 45,000 tons, projected to grow to about 70,000, to 63 to 70,000 by 2027. So that is growing. But even then, that is not sufficient quantity to be able to stop the market for export and to focus on edible oils. But of course, when the price, if the price changes in terms of that the export is no longer attractive to the exporters, then you start having alternative use. But at the moment, the prices are not yet prohibitive for you to start thinking about
local market.
People started thinking about that after COVID when the market was down, but it has now recovered. So that conversation, even though there, but the expansion for even supplying the kernel is still there. And we need to continue expanding.
Great. Now, you've talked to us about the shape and form in which we export our macadamia. But there was now also the policy shift where, as from late last year, we could export nut in shell, right? Does that affect our capability of also processing back at home? Because now we do have that option. And as much as the ban was lifted temporarily, what are your thoughts? Should that remain, or should we try see if there's some regulation in that sector? What are your thoughts?
Let me give you a good story here. When you export nut in shell, you see we have very different sizes of nut in this packet. Mainly this goes to China. When the Chinese come, for you to do the nut in shell, they go for the biggest nut. That's what they purchase. And another thing that they do, when they are purchasing, they have an X-ray machine that checks the quality of the nut when it's inside. So if any of the big nuts has any damage, it is rejected. So they take only the premium nut. But when you are processing, because the demand for kernel is in different sizes, from the big size, small size, even when it is broken, there's still a market for that for confectionery. So what happens is that when you take the premium, then the processors themselves are not able to access. So when you are serving your customers, there is one quality of nut you can never supply. And of course, we are not the only producers. So some people want to come to Kenya to buy the best nut. Even the one we are selling to America, the ones we are selling to Europe, they are looking for the big nut, especially the ones that use it for a snack. So when that nut is not available, then you are killing that market. And so it is a trade-off. You allow nut in shell to go, then you are destroying the market for the big nut, where people are paying for a value for it. You have just talked about the shell that can be used for energy. Once you send the whole thing, the nut goes, the shell goes. Even you cannot have anything to use for your boilers. The other thing that of course happens is that I told you the biggest workforce in a macadamia factory is the sorting. That's where a lot of big workforce is. The sorting, the aggregation and all that. So when you send the nut, that you cut this whole process. These two processes are no longer there. And the workforce in a macadamia factory are in this place. They are not there. This is in the farm. The factory is
there.
So if you are not giving nuts to this factory, then it means the factories, you are almost saying, you shut down, we are sending our employees in shell to China, unless the Chinese get employment at the disadvantage of our people. So this is what we are talking. You eliminate that, then you deal with that. All right. So there's also the conversation on now that China is doing very well in production. Will we reach a point where now they are sufficient? They don't need our nut in shell. You'll get to talk to us about that and more when we come back from this short commercial break. Please don't go anywhere.